Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Back on Illinois Rising, Joe Kaiser and Illinois Opportunity Project Vice President Mark Cavers. Mark, we were just talking about how this week marked the one-year anniversary of the 32% income tax increase that the General Assembly passed last year. This also, a little bit last weekend, June 30th, marked the 30th anniversary, so a lot going on this week, of the Illinois General Assembly passing a bill to publicly fund the construction of what's now Guaranteed Rate Field, formerly U.S. Cellular Field and Comiskey Park. I don't think Illinoisans really realized this whole deal that went down, but back in the 80s, then Governor Jim Thompson, the namesake for that beautiful building downtown, the Thompson Center, and then Chicago Mayor Harold Washington collaborated in pushing forward this bill through the General Assembly that allowed for a $150 million subsidy for what's now Guaranteed Rate Field, and taxpayers are still paying for it. Stadium subsidies, a good deal, a bad deal. I mean, the White Sox have, in the time since, won one World Series. There are obviously White Sox fans in the city somewhere. What are your thoughts on that whole, and as a policy, the idea of bailing out kind of a major league, a professional sports team?
I think we've seen it's bad policy. You see it on the bank sheets. You talk about some of the other examples like the Springfield Convention Center that's deficit spending every year, this Springfield Sports Authority that's deficit spending every year. And so we've seen it's bad policy on that front. And then you've seen other examples where sports teams are able to raise the money and privately fund and upkeep a stadium on their own without public financing. And you talk about what happened in Springfield, and it's fiction. They stopped the clocks because they're so desperate to pass a bailout for the stadium on the south side of Chicago. So everyone else says it's 12:03, but they have to pass it by midnight, so they stop the clocks and pass it.
Right, that's the craziest thing about what happened with the White Sox is they had this midnight deadline that they self-imposed, and they couldn't reach an agreement in time, so they stopped the clocks, turned off the clocks in the General Assembly, and then the deadline didn't really exist. And I saw people, when this anniversary came up last week, Rich Miller and CapFax and some other places celebrating it and saying, oh, this is so cool, listen to the audio from the General Assembly back then. But it's such a boondoggle, and it's not just the White Sox. The White Sox are the most marquee example, and you see the renovations to Soldier Field that taxpayers are still paying for. But you have all these local examples. You alluded to the Springfield Arena. The Bank of Springfield Center is in debt every year. And it's upwards of $800,000 in property taxes it's collecting from local taxpayers. So that's an extra $22 on a property tax bill in Springfield. You have a arena in the Quad Cities that's a burden on property taxpayers in Rosemont. Schaumburg's another one, Crestwood, Joliet. The state of Illinois for decades has been in this business, and it's not just exclusive to Illinois. I mean, states do this all across the country of building convention centers and arenas on a taxpayer dime. But what is specific to Illinois is the fact that taxpayers can't really afford an extra thing like this. You have the administrative costs, school district costs, township costs, 7,000 layers of government. You can't add these boondoggles on the backs of taxpayers when they're paying for all these other things at the local and state level.
But you look at it like from a elected official's perspective, and you go through those numbers. So worst property tax in the nation, people are fleeing. People are fleeing, small and middle market cities. You've done a lot of that research on those cities. Property taxes are high, income taxes are high, small businesses are leaving. You're failing to educate kids in Chicago. In a lot of communities, you can't even keep your residents safe. So what exactly is your legacy or your record? So if you're an elected official and here's my legacy and my record, well then, yeah, of course I want to bail out some stadium in order to 30 years from now, Rich Miller will be talking about how my legacy is this great big stadium. Oh, never mind that we bankrupted the state, couldn't reform pensions, couldn't educate kids. I got the big marquee.
Right, yeah. Your campaign slogan or your legacy is I saved the White Sox. I prevented the White Sox from moving to Florida. But you'd think on that same note that now it would be it wouldn't be politically beneficial now because the big issue for Illinoisans now is not I'm worried about the White Sox leaving. The big issue now is we have the highest or among the highest property taxes in the nation, definitely the highest in the Midwest. And you're seeing your neighbors move to states nearby that don't have that tax burden. So if politicians now tried to pull something like this, and I don't know for sure, we don't have the example of it, my assumption would be, or my hope would be, that this is just not tenable anymore, that taxpayers are waking up to a degree, and if they see a $150 million subsidy going to a billionaire's stadium, that they'd say, you know what, this is not okay. And they'd either vote with their feet or vote at the ballot box.
And we have the examples not with stadiums, but with things like the plastic bag ban or the soda tax, where you see people, if there's a tangible thing, it catches their attention and they revolt against it. So you can see that the motivation is there. We just need the impetus. And the other thing with it is, we talked a little bit with Alyssia earlier, is you have so many different units of government. It's hard to police them all. And so, you're paying attention to the spending boondoggle over here. And, oh, by the way, the state just bailed out or, funded the Obama library, and federal taxpayers are going to help pay for it. So it's purposefully created to distract us all and not be able to pinpoint and focus on one area of spending.
Yeah, when you have 7,000 units of government, maybe you can follow what's going on in Springfield, but how do you know what's going on in your township or your school board? It's almost, your life is so busy, it's kind of hard to keep track of all these different taxing bodies.
Well, yeah, I mean, we got other things to worry about. The single mom who's trying to pay her property taxes, get her kids to and from school, doesn't have time to watch the 9, 10, 11 different taxing bodies on her property tax bill. So when something pops up, when something gets attention, then people get upset and people push back.